Thank you all for coming tonight. It's March 22nd. We're here for the second public outreach meeting for the proposed fire station building project. I'm Doug Lapp. I'm your town administrator, and I'm very pleased to be here tonight. A quick outline you'll see on the screen. We're going to mix this up a little bit because we're not sure how many of you may have been here for the first presentation. So feel free to let us know if some of this material you'd like to go over quicker or you'd like us to spend a little bit more time. But we're prepared to go over the need for the project, highlight a little bit of the public outreach that we've done so far. We'll go over the preliminary design, and some of the most important new information we have is we have an updated project budget. So we have a more detailed cost estimate, more detailed projections for what the tax impact will be on Rockland taxpayers. We'll talk about that financing and then go over the next steps. So I'd like to start by introducing our building committee. We have some of the members here tonight. Fire Chief Scott Duffy to my right, Deputy Fire Chief Tom Heaney. We have Chris DiFilippo, who is an architect in town, who's on the committee. And is Jim Killinger here? There we go. I'm sorry. I missed you there. Retired Deputy Chief of the Fire Department here in Rockland. Oh, I'm sorry. Too many faces. And Charlie Williams as well from the Rockland Fire Department. My apologies, Charlie. Our design team, we have excellent architects in the front row here. We have Kelsey Laser and Stuart Marshall from the firm of Schwartz Silver. They're a very experienced architecture firm that's designed and constructed a lot of fire departments throughout the Commonwealth. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Fire Chief Duffy. You can use the arrow.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for being here at this public outreach meeting to discuss, hopefully a potential new station for the town. The current fire station that we have up on Union Street was originally built as a 3-bay station in 1939. It was finished, and that's when it was occupied. Prior to that, it was the old wooden fire station. That 3-bay station was built with federal funds, WPA work funds, just soon after the Depression. The right-hand side of the fire station, or the left hand as you're looking at it, an additional 3 bays were built onto that station in 1978. Again, that project was funded through federal funds as a work stimulus program in the late 70s to get the economy back going. And again, that was 1978. Since then, not much has changed within the fire station. A little bit of repairs, maybe some conversion of some rooms into offices. So as we've grown as a fire station, we've started to outgrow the current fire station. First, how many people have seen this presentation or similar to it? Okay, so I'm gonna, for the majority of the people that are seeing it for the first time, I'm sorry, I'm gonna repeat myself for those that have seen it. So the fire station has become too small. Back in 1938, vehicles were much smaller. Back in 1978, the vehicles were much smaller. Currently now, apparatus, we don't have enough room in the station to fit all of our apparatus. And the apparatus that we are ordering, purchasing, building are becoming too big for the fire station, too wide. We don't have the length of room from the front of the truck to the back of the truck to fit multiple trucks back to back in many parts of the station. So what looks like, a 6-bay station, at one time used to hold, 9 or 10 vehicles. Well, unfortunately, that's not how it is anymore. We're down to 8 vehicles within that station. We just purchased on a federal grant a new brush truck. When that truck came in and backed into the station, because it holds water, we have to keep it in a warm environment. We had to move a truck out of the station. So now we're moving, expensive trucks and storing them outside in the weather, where typically we wouldn't or shouldn't have to. Storage throughout the station is very jam tight. We have to store boxes in paper towels, toilet paper in boxes. Those are all getting stored on top of lockers, gear lockers, that run along the outside of the station. The advent of the medical, the ambulance, running the ambulance, was just coming into play in the late 70s when this station was built. The amount of equipment and materials we need to keep for that, we filled up our storerooms. We have a very small basement underneath the station. That is jam full with fire equipment and now COVID supplies and supplies that we've built up over COVID. We've had to build more shelving in that area. In addition to, just our equipment, it's our personnel as well. So sleeping quarters. Firefighters are on duty 24 hours a day. They come in at 8 in the morning. They leave the next day at 8 in the morning. They are allowed to sleep while on duty at night. So, we do have sleeping quarters for all the firefighters. The sleeping quarters are 2 larger bunk rooms, and then some officers and senior personnel room have their own private rooms, but they're really not private. We've got 3, 4 beds jammed into some of the smaller rooms, and then the rest of the department is split amongst 2 larger bunk rooms where, firefighters can literally reach out and touch one another as they're sleeping and poke them if they're snoring. A lot of this, where this comes into play now, is, we're a co-ed fire department, which, diversity is great. We now have 2 females on the department. I think I have a picture showing one of the bunk rooms. 2 of those beds we've kind of put off not into a corner, but, we've given them space in a corner. We've set up some partition walls for privacy. A new station would be designed to accommodate a co-ed department. Bathroom conditions at the fire station, there's a picture you'll be able to see. We've recently, put some shower inserts to fix some of it up, but the bathroom situations at the fire department haven't changed very much since the 70s, when the last remodel was done. There's been some minor work, but nothing major. Good thing is that we can accommodate the co-ed department, and we do have a separate female bathroom on the 2nd floor, which was good. It wasn't originally designed that way, but we can accommodate that. Turnout gear, firefighter turnout gear. The gear we wear into a fire costs the town, the taxpayers, approximately $3,500 a set for pants, coat, boots, and a helmet and gloves. We all have 2 sets because, when you go into a fire, we have to clean them afterwards. We need a set to turn into. That turnout gear has a shelf life of about 10 years. After 10 years, it needs to be replaced. What can make this gear break down quicker than the 10 years and become less efficient for us to protect us is sunlight. UV light breaks down all our gear not very quickly, but quickly. All our gear lockers are along the exterior walls of the fire station, all in between the windows. Any space that we can really find for a locker, exposed to sunlight. Now, our gear is at risk of being damaged by the sun, but also when we go into a fire and we come out of a fire, that gear is contaminated with the chemicals from the smoke that we're in. We come back to the fire station, we have equipment to wash that, special washers and dryers to wash our gear as best we can. As much as we wash that gear, there is still chemicals in that will off-gas and will release chemicals. So really that gear should be kept in a separate room, a special room, with its own ventilation system to keep everybody safe within that station. Unfortunately, we have to keep ours along the exterior of the station, and there'll be pictures of that as well. Lack of room for decontaminating our gear. Currently, right now, the washers are in the basement of the fire station. It works okay. But in order to dry them, we have to bring them upstairs to the gear dryer. In order to properly decontaminate some of the firefighting equipment, that's done in the back bench area. I'll show you a picture. Just kind of amongst the areas where the firefighters eat and wait for calls. So we're contaminating our own kind of work and living space with the job we do, just by the nature of the design of the current station. Lack of room for training. Our area, our site around our station is very tight. It's a very small parcel of land. There's not much room to pull the trucks out onto the front ramp, up to the front driveway of the fire station and train. We do it. We block up the front ramp. We block up the sidewalk going along the Union Street, causing pedestrians to kind of walk out in traffic to get around us. Our ladder truck, we cannot pull fully out of the station without blocking a lane of Union Street. So when we do want to train with the big ladder truck, we have to go to a remote location. Usually Calvary Chapel down on the Rockland Plaza. They've been very good in accommodating us and letting us train and set the ladder up there. And then parking. We barely have enough parking on site for the current on-duty personnel and then admin personnel, the deputy, the fire prevention officer, myself, and our executive assistant. At shift change, there are vehicles left out in the streets. Sometimes you'll see one up on the sidewalk of the station. That's just our day-to-day operations. Now, if we were to hold a training or a meeting where we need more members of the fire department to come in, or if we host a training where we have other town members or other firefighters from other areas come in to train with us, parking's atrocious. They're parking all along Union Street. We're making the local businesses mad because we're taking up their spots. So then we end up parking down Pacific, Belmont streets, and the neighbors are getting upset because we're taking their spots. So a new station would hopefully alleviate some of these concerns for us, or they definitely would. And here are the photos of kind of what we're seeing. This photo here kind of shows our lockers, our gear lockers, our clothing lockers, all along the exterior. This is on the apparatus, the first floor of the fire station. You can see how close the vehicles are to this. So imagine you're a firefighter, a call comes in, and you have to come get your gear out of this locker. And you're literally kind of shuffling down the side to get to your gear. In addition, these lockers, the gray lockers, which we've kind of acquired over the years from different buildings being torn down, or a lot from the airbase when the airbase was torn down, these lockers here are where the firefighters are keeping their spare uniforms that they might have to change into, whether they're working overtime or they get dirty, their primary uniform gets dirty, they change into a spare uniform. These uniforms are out and about getting in their other personal items, towels, sheets for their bedding, their toiletries, gas, diesel, soot from, off-gassing of possible chemicals from our gear is getting intermingled with their clean clothing in their toiletries. Speaking of toiletries, all our shower facilities are up on the second floor. All the lockers for the firefighters are on the first floor. There's no locker room at the station, so we squeeze them in where we can put them. So after a fire, or if they're changing shift in the morning and staying and a firefighter showers, goes downstairs, gets his toiletries out of his locker, goes upstairs, showers, then has to bring it back down. Another locker room up here, top picture. You can see some of these smaller lockers. We've tried to replace or get bigger lockers for firefighters that utilize these small lockers. But again, for a while, these small lockers were all that the firefighters had to keep personal items. Kitchen was installed in 1978. Still the same kitchen up there then as it was then. The lovely shade of orange, and it's pretty tight. I would say the width of the kitchen is the width of this space back here, maybe the length of from these two tables. And the firefighters are in there, cooking, making dinners for 7-8 personnel every night, and for lunch. They do cook many of their meals at the fire station, utilizing a kitchen that a single family would use. This is the back area of the fire station on the first floor. this table and these great benches. These are where the firefighters will hang out. They'll train. They come in the morning. They'll talk with the ongoing, off-going shifts. We'll talk amongst each other. And, just kind of see what's going on for the day. They sit back here. They'll plan their day. They'll do some training. And then this is also, where they'll wait for calls. It's also their breakfast table, their lunch table, often their dinner table. This is in the back of the fire station, right behind the apparatus, right amongst the turnout gear that has potentially, off-gassing, dangerous chemicals. There's a workbench back here. There's a workbench back here with gasoline cans, some other chemicals for the trucks that we need, and firefighting gear after a fire will all come collect here and get washed in this area, decontaminated. Again, amongst where the firefighters are eating their breakfast, lunch, and dinners. Typical bunk room up here. This is in the back part of the new station. Just kind of shows this was taken probably during COVID because the beds are spread apart. I will say that there's double the beds in that room now. And again, privacy is a concern. A new station, there'd be partition walls, curtains for better privacy of firefighters while they are sleeping. Bathrooms. Bathroom here. I know it's a hard picture to see, but this bathroom, I don't know if I would want to wash my dogs in it. I've taken hundreds of showers in it after fires and incidents, but it's nasty. We've put some shower inserts in, made it look a little bit nicer, but when you shower in this shower, it's a rain shower downstairs because of the old plumbing. So this is just some of the conditions that the firefighters are working in and really living in, because we do live at the station 24/7 when on duty. Deputy, do you have anything to add?
Just important on that, the one on the bottom where you can see the red door, that red door pops right up. It's a hose tower where we hang the hose after fires or incidents. We also do some training with ladders in the hose tower. But that hose tower goes up to the second floor and then eventually through the roof. So all of that soot and other diesel exhaust goes right up that. It goes right into our sleeping quarters, office quarters, bathroom facilities on the second floor.
Now, if you've ever visited the fire station, we do have diesel capture system on the trucks. They're yellow hoses. They come off the exhaust of the trucks. They're efficient. They work well, but they're not 100% efficient. So they do not capture all of the diesel and soot that's coming out as the trucks are pulling out or backing in. That's a plus that we've been able to get over the years with grant money, is to outfit the fire station with those. But again, we still have the issues of the contaminants in the diesel soot and exhaust within the station. Anybody have any questions on that, or? Okay. So I think those are the big needs of why we need a station, a new station. The health of the firefighters, healthier firefighters, and are going to be more fiscally responsible for the town. We won't be covering people with overtime or any type of insurance if they become sick at the fire station. We can deliver a better service. The station would also have areas of, we'll get into that. I think we have some stuff. The outreach that we've done to date, starting back in June of 22, we had an outreach meeting at the fire station with the local abutters around the 99 Church Street area. Howard Street, East Water Street, Franklin Street, Church Street area. Doug Lapp has started a television show, a talk show kind of, called TA Q&A. Very informative. He just did one with Water and Superintendent Crystal Cameron, which is very good, very informative. And he and I had also done one for the station and why we would need a new station. November 22, another public outreach meeting, very similar to this, just is not, we have some better information for you and more up-to-date information for you. And then January of 23, ZBA public hearing. That public hearing was to get a special permit. For the fire station to be located at 99 Church Street, it would need a special permit. So there was an open meeting with the zoning board, and it got approved. We were granted our special permit to be able to put a station on that site. And then February of 23, the architects came and presented one last time for the selectmen. And at that time, the selectmen voted to put the fire station on the ballot and for April, and then the warrant for May for town meeting. So all of these public outreach meetings have been recorded, and there's a good information that we've created a fire station building project on the town website, which is up here, and you can go to there to see all of the presentations that have been given, and similar to tonight will also be posted. Doug, anything? Preliminary design of the fire station. I'm going to pass this off to the architects, Stuart Marshall from Schwartz Silver Architects in Boston. Will run you through some of their design. This is a very schematic and conceptual design. So, Stuart, thank you.
Oh, thanks, Chief. So just a little bit about our firm quickly. We've been around for 43 years. We've done a lot of work for municipalities. In fact, our first public project was the town of Wellesley's fire station. That's in the lower right-hand corner. And that's a station that's been, 43 years, and it hasn't been added onto or renovated in any significant way. So I think part of the challenge of doing this work is balancing, obviously, cost of the projects, but with longevity and durability of the projects. We want to build something that is going to serve the town for a long time. The two stations in the center are more recent stations that we did with Bob Mitchell. Now, Bob Mitchell is working with us on this project, too, and he is really a leading expert at fire station programming and design. And so we've been working with him to really initially make sure that we're building the right size station, and that not an easy thing to do, but again, right size being something that will be flexible, durable, long-lasting, serving the needs of the station going forward. One of the first things we did was an extensive programming effort with Bob and with the chief and with the department and the committee. One, to make sure to try and figure out what is the actual size of the station that the town needs, and with that, we looked to apply that station need to several sites in town, and this is just some of the kind of criteria that we evaluated for whether or not the site would be useful for the station. The current station site, pretty obvious given the images the chief just showed us, that there's no way we can practically fit an expanded station on that site. The site then that was chosen to pursue and move forward with for the preliminary design is the Church Street site that Kelsey will be showing you sort of where we are at this point, walk you through the process, how it's developed so far. This is the site, of course. Kelsey, do you want to come up and walk through the design drawings?
Thank you, Stuart. Yes, so this is the proposed site for the new fire station. It's at 99 Church Street, which is a corner lot at the corner of Howard and Church Street. This is a site plan that was prepared by our landscape architect, Kyle Zick. What we're seeing with this site plan is trying to have a response to alleviate a lot of the deficiencies that are going on at the current station, where we now have an apron on Church Street where the emergency vehicles will be exiting. This is going to be long enough for all the vehicles to fully pull out without blocking the sidewalk or street. We have enough parking on the right-hand side of the plan to accommodate shift change, in addition to any fire department visitors that would be coming to the station from the public. There's also one drive-through bay that's at the top end of the apparatus bay, so the ladder trucks will be able to circulate all the way around and pull through. There's also space at the top of the plan, which is at the back side of the building, where fire department trucks will be able to do exercise training, and back the trucks up to the building to work with the ladder truck. We also are providing in this plan, which I'll get into a little bit more in depth a little bit further on in the presentation, about the kind of detailed plantings and landscaping that we're proposing to provide enhancements for the site. And what we have is that so there's the parking that's at the right-hand side, and then the kind of primary public entrance is that kind of gray space that's in the center on Howard Street for public entry into the building, and then there's also a personnel entrance at the back side of the building. This is getting into the first floor plan, so it is a pretty big footprint, but what the chief and steward have discussed is that we've done a very extensive programming exercise with the fire department, where we're sizing all our spaces to accommodate the equipment that the department needs to provide kind of the best service to the town, where we now have space for the decontamination equipment, and it's in the right proximity to their turnout gear lockers and to the apparatus bay for when they're returning from calls. What we have is a very rigorous separation of the hot and cold zones, where the hot zones being where there's going to be contamination from vehicle exhaust and from on gear returning from calls. And so we try to do a very diligent job of separating those spaces with what we're calling the warm zone, these vestibules, and then the blue coated area is all of the space that's kind of readily occupiable, offices, training rooms, conference rooms, and restrooms on the first floor. And then at the second floor is where we have the personnel kind of living quarters with the bunks and the kitchen, and then some additional office space up at the top. There's also in the apparatus bay a training mezzanine that's over some of the accessory spaces for the apparatus. We did go before the Zoning Board of Appeals to receive a special permit, which allows us to develop this parcel, which is in a residential zone for a fire station. That permit was granted in a decision that was dated February 1st of this year. We did not receive or pursue any relief on the building itself. The building is compliant with the zoning code. Where we needed relief was in the parking lot, where because of the constraints of the site, we had to shrink down the drive aisle width and some of the parking space lengths from what's traditionally required, but the board did grant that relief to this project. And additionally, it was, we received a variance for the setbacks both at the top and bottom of the plan. And the conditions for that approval was that the department maintains a landscape buffer between both the Howard Street and the neighboring properties on the backside. Yeah.
Could you speak up a little
Sure.
bit?
Sorry.
That doesn't amplify
Okay.
the mic.
Sorry.
So that, yeah, thank you.
And some of the other conditions that the board required on condition for granting this special permit was that the chief is going to prepare and submit a noise mitigation report with a plan on how to handle sirens in this residential neighborhood. We're also will be, if this project goes forward, going before the planning board for a site plan approval. All of our lighting on the site is going to be dark sky compliant. We're going to have sound mitigation at the mechanics bay and the apparatus bays. There'll be limits on the idling of emergency vehicles on the property, in addition to maintaining the landscape buffer. So what does that landscape buffer look like? This is the planting plan that was prepared by our landscape architect, where you can see we have a series of street trees. Some are larger for shade and to provide a little bit more visibility coverage of the building from the adjacent neighborhood. Parcels on the opposite side of the street. We also have some smaller ornamental trees closer to the entrance, as well as evergreen trees and shrubs along the right-hand side of the plan, to provide some visual separation and a bit of a buffer between the adjacent properties on Howard Street. And some low shrubs that are going in planter beds at the kind of foundation of the building. And what those look like, our landscape architect has tried to select both native plant species, but also with enough variety that are going to give color and visual interest throughout all the seasons of the year, so that there'll be something interesting going on, and it won't be barren in the winter. Shrubs that provide winter berries, as well as interest in the summer and fall. And then these are also some of the lower perennial bulb plants that will be planted around the building foundation on Howard Street. And then these are some preliminary conceptual renderings that our office has developed that are kind of show just our initial thoughts about both giving you a sense of the massing of the building on the parcel, and ideas about materiality are just kind of initial thoughts, but these are going to be subject to being revisited as the project moves forward with the other stages of development. And so our next slide is on the project budget, so I'll turn it over to Doug.
Did you want?
Well, I was just going to say, part of the development process, though we haven't gone into full design at this point, is to develop enough information so that we can get somewhat accurate pricing at this point. Right now, no better time than the present, really. Right now, we're seeing $800 a square foot cost for building fire stations on average. And so this we feel really falls in that at that number. So the budget, pure construction cost would be $26 million. The soft costs added to that, A&E services, an owner's project manager, testing, furniture, etc., brings the total up to, with a contingency, brings the total up to $33 million. And I say no better time than the present. I mean, we're seeing into the future 5% escalation rates year after year. So this number would continue to go up. Now this is set for construction in 2024 at this point. So it's escalated already to that time frame. So it's not as if it's under construction today. I'll turn the rest over to Doug.
Thank you, Stuart. One comment I'll make about the cost in that last slide is it's significantly more than it would have been to build this building 5 years ago or 10 years ago, and that's just the reality of where we're at today. That $800 a square foot is a number that we're seeing other communities when they go out to bid. Those are the actual bid prices. And I bring that up not to make us feel bad that we didn't do this years ago when it could have been done a lot cheaper, but just as a reminder that the longer the community waits, the more expensive the project is going to get, unfortunately. So as we talk about how we finance something like this, this slide talks about different types of options. The thing I'll just say right out of the top is the town has a bond rating. If you're not familiar with bond ratings, it's kind of like a credit rating that you'd have for yourself, a credit score. We have a very good bond rating. It's a AA, stable. That is very good. And the reason why it's helpful is because when the town borrows money for projects, we issue bonds, we get better interest rates, better financing, which means savings to taxpayers. So as far as how to pay for a project, unfortunately, currently, there are no grants to pay for fire stations. And I just have to put that out there to be very honest and transparent with everyone. You know, we just built a beautiful Phelps Elementary School right next door here, and we were fortunate enough to get over $30 million in grants from the State Mass School Building Authority. If we were going to build a new library, the State Board of Library Commissioners has similar types of grant funding to construct new libraries. Unfortunately, those types of programs don't currently exist for fire stations. So what we're left with is funding that fully from taxpayers. The vehicle to do that is something you're probably familiar with. The town has done it in the past. It's called a debt exclusion. And I've put a little bit of the detail up there. Basically, all that means is it requires approval from voters, both at the ballot, at the town election, and at town meeting. It requires both. What it does is it would raise your taxes for the period of time that we'd be issuing bonds to pay for the project. Once the bonds are paid off, then that tax increase would go back down. It requires a simple majority at the ballot and a 2/3 majority at town meeting. Our town election, I think as you all know, is Saturday, April 8th. It's coming up soon, and our town meeting is Monday, May 1st. So this is what your ballot will look like. Hopefully everyone will turn up at the town election and vote. So what's on the top here is what it looks like on the top of your ballot. There's a lot of stuff below that I'm not showing. Those are for electing people for various boards and committees, things like that. Down at the bottom of the ballot, there's one question. That's this fire station question. And I'll just read it quickly because I know the resolution is not the best. It says, shall the town of Rockland be allowed to exempt from the provision of Proposition 2.5, so-called, the amounts required to pay the bonds issued in order to construct, equip, and furnish a new fire station located at 99 Church Street, which will include the demolition of the Lincoln School and all associated site work and infrastructure. So one thing you'll notice is this ballot question does not have the number $33.2 million in it. That's not us being sneaky or not being transparent. The state forces us to word debt exclusion ballot questions this way. We have no choice in the way the question is worded. When we get to the town meeting vote, there'll be a motion that's read before the article is voted, and that motion will specifically reference 33.2 million. But we're not allowed under state law to list that number here, and I think it's partly because there's an unknown amount of financing and interest and things like that that the town will incur. But that's what the ballot question will look like. So what this means, and this might seem kind of silly, but this question was raised to us at a prior meeting, so I thought we'd just make it very crystal clear. A yes vote on that ballot question would approve the project. A no vote on this project would not approve the project. So I just want to be clear. Yes means you are for the project. No means you oppose the project. Now, the most important thing, which is probably the main reason why you all came here tonight, is what does it mean for you, the taxpayer? How is it going to affect your tax bill? So I have a summary here, and I want to take a minute to explain it a little bit, because I know there's a lot of information. The first thing is I'll just start with some of these assumptions at the bottom, because there's a lot of assumptions in here. We're going with the current project estimate, which is $33.2 million, assuming our bond rating stays the same. And I say that because if this were to pass at the ballot and town meeting, we'd have to have another bond rating call with Standard & Poor's or Moody's, one of the rating agencies, that give us a new bond rating. I believe we'll stay at AA stable. We're doing all the right things financially as a town. We're assuming a 4 to 5% interest rate for a 30-year note. Again, that's higher than the interest rate we were paying on the elementary school, just because interest rates have gone up these past few years, as I'm sure everyone knows from seeing the news. This would assume generally level debt payments, kind of like a fixed rate mortgage payment on your home. And I'm assuming for the numbers up above that these are for what's the average single-family home valuation in town. So currently in Rockland, the average value of a home is $446,925. I want to stress, that's the average valuation from the Town of Rockland Assessing Department. So that's not exactly the same if you go on Zillow or if you see a listing, through a realtor. The town's assessing department has to follow Department of Revenue rules, so there's usually a lag. It's usually, a little bit behind the exact current market conditions, but that's what your tax bills are based on, so we thought that's the appropriate number. So you'll see the two little bottom check marks, if you can see it behind those tables. If your home is valued by the assessing department at more than $446,000, your impact will be higher than these numbers I'm showing at the top. If your home is valued less than that, your tax impact will be smaller. So if you look at the chart up above, if this project were to pass at the ballot and town meeting, in the first few years, the impact is relatively lower than in later years. The first year at FY24, again, FY is fiscal year. Our fiscal year starts July 1st, ends on June 30th. So FY24 is July 1 of 23 through June 30 of 2024. The tax impact is very minor. It's only $7.31 a year, or monthly, you can see it's 61 cents a month. That's because in the beginning of the project, there's not a lot of cost that the town is incurring yet. You see as we get into the next year, in FY25, it starts to creep up. That's when more of the design work is done. We're bringing in contractors. They're just getting started. And then a couple years later, once we get into the box in the middle that I highlighted, fiscal years 27 through 53, that's a long period of time, you'll see in that period, I've averaged it out, it's on average right around $329 a year tax increase, which obviously translates to about $82 a quarter, a little over $27 a month, or a little under $1 a day. And again, you can see that's for 26 years or something like that, for a good period of time. Yes, sir, did you have a question?
Are those numbers cumulative? So the
Um,
first year you pay $731, the next year it's
Oh, I understand your question, yep.
$296.
Yep. I'm going to repeat it so it's captured in the microphone for the recording. So the question is, are these impacts cumulative? And I think his question is, so in the first year you pay an extra $7.31. In the next year, is it an extra $731 plus an extra $289? And in the third year, is it another $300? So the answer is, yes, they're cumulative. So, for example, in FY27, your tax increase is $329 a year. It's not $329 plus $304 plus $289. Plus, that would be a $900, $1,000 tax increase. So yes, it's cumulative. If you think of it like your mortgage schedule, where you have what your mortgage premiums are every year, that's kind of the snapshot I'm looking at. Does that answer your question, sir? So it's in those years, it's $329 compared to today. $329 per year is the tax increase. And then you can see it kind of tails off a little bit into FY54. That's when the project is sort of nearing completion. Then those last 2 years, it's really ramping down. There's just the last bit of work to be completed. Again, these are estimates. I want to stress that. Estimates for a couple of reasons. Again, I don't have a crystal ball, but we think our interest rate is a reasonable assumption. It also is estimating the cash flow of the project. Maybe a contractor could ramp up a little quicker and get things done a little sooner, but these are reasonable projections based on experience with lots of other projects. Did you have a question, sir? I see you. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am.
Just following up on what you said, this $33.2 million project that you're describing here doesn't seem to account for any demolition work that has to be done. It just
No,
seems
this
to
does.
be.
This does. This includes the total project cost. So these numbers reflect $33.2 million. The $33.2 million is all in everything. The architects, the engineers, the project manager, demolition, site work, everything. Constructing the building, it's total cost.
But that's just an estimate, and there's nothing to say that the town votes yes, and then the project cost becomes $70 million.
I can explain that. No, I'm glad you asked that question. So two things. The first, the most important thing is, like I mentioned before, at town meeting, it requires both a ballot and town meeting. At town meeting, a motion will be read that says, will the town authorize $33.2 million? That means we are limited to $33.2 million, where we will not be authorized to spend a penny more than $33.2 million for the cost of the project.
What does that mean if you start, you run out of money, then what?
I'll repeat it, Charlie, that's fine. So the question is, what happens if the bids come in too high? So I'd say two things to that. One is, we were very fortunate when the town built the Phelps Elementary School project. That project actually came in right now. It's not done yet, so there still could be a couple of change orders. It's right now roughly around $12 million under budget. I want to stress that. That town meeting voted for a project up to $86 million, and I think currently, the current estimate for where we're going to finish is closer to $72, $73 million. So that's one thing. We have a good track record. Now, the economy has changed since then. Construction costs have gone way up, supply chain has changed, so there are different factors now. But the next thing I would say is, if this were to pass the ballot in town meeting, and I'm going to get in, actually, this might even be my next slide. No, I'll get to it. I do have a slide, but I'll answer your question. Well, the architects would finish their design. They would create construction documents, which we would then go out to bid to get construction bids. So we'll definitely have enough money for all the construction, for the design and the construction documents to be prepared. So we go out to bid in a competitive process. We follow state rules. If the bids come in greater than the amount of funding we have available, greater than our total cost, we have to reject the bids. If we don't have the money to pay for the project, we don't sign the contract, period. So there's ways that we can protect ourselves. For example, maybe the architects might decide, based on the bidding climate, we'll have some bid alternates. So those are things where you can say, the base bid on the project is this, but we'd also like to do A, B, C, and D, and we want separate pricing for those. So if the total cost comes in bigger than that number, we won't accept some of those alternates. So we'll just only do the core part of the project that we need. So there's ways to look at that. Or we just simply reject all the bid prices because they're too expensive, and we have to redo the project to something that will fit within our budget. So it's a long way of saying we are limited to the number that town meeting votes. I want to be very, very clear on that. And we've been conservative with these estimates. So the last thing we want to do is put ourselves in a position where we spend time and money putting a project out to bid that exceeds the funding we have available. That would just be crazy. I wanted to show a little bit about what our current debt looks like. That's a question that's come up a lot before. The axis on the bottom, the line on the bottom, are fiscal years. It's 2023. We're beginning on the lower left-hand corner. And the y-axis, the vertical line on the left, is our annual debt service. Think of that like your mortgage payment. That's the debt that the town pays every year for all its current projects. Middle school, high school, elementary school, roads, things like that. And it's in thousands. So on the left-hand side, that dark shaded area, you see it's about 2/3 of the way up, between 6,000 and 7,000. That means it's a little under $7 million a year. That's the debt we currently pay. And you see that debt is declining. It's going down over the years. That's just the way our debt schedule, when we went out to issue the bonds, that's the way we finance those bonds. The lighter shaded color is what it would look like if this project were approved, if this $33.2 million project was approved. So you'd see, and I'm going to go to the next part here, this dotted line, you'll see if you go over to the right, in about 10 years, a little after 2033, you'll see we'll be at right around the same place we're at now. So granted, for around 10 years, there will be an increase compared to the debt service we're paying now. But then again, once we get to 2033, while you'll have this $329 increase we talked about before, other debt that we previously voted, those costs will be declining. And then you see it's even more significantly declining after that. So that's important for you to know. You're voting for this increase. There will be, you'll feel that tax increase for 10 years, but you won't feel it the same way because our increases, those debt payments, are declining significantly based on the debt schedule. Yes, sir?
The 12 million is what they're maybe left over from the school. Does it go just pay the debt?
That's a great question. Yeah, it's a great question. I'm going to repeat it so it's captured in the mic for the recording. So his question was, was the $12 million in savings that I mentioned, $12 million in savings that I mentioned from the school building project. Can we use that to offset this project? That's a great question, and the answer,
This project, does it go to offset this project, does it stay as reserve, or does it pay off current debt?
okay, great question. So he's asking, does that savings from the other project, can we pay off other debt with it? Do we save it? Can it be applied to this? The answer to all those is no. State law is very clear. When you vote a debt exclusion for a project, it can only be used for that project and that project only. Cannot be spent on anything else. And we only borrow what we need as we go. So the town has never borrowed that full $86 million for that school project, so we don't have money sitting around. We just never borrowed it, which means we never taxed the residents to begin with. So great question. I'm going to include that in our town meeting presentation. That's good. So no, every project can only, the funding can only be used for that project voted. All right. So next steps, this gets to when I was answering the woman's question earlier. Again, the way the process would work, if it passes both at the ballot and town meeting, as I mentioned earlier, the first thing we'd have to do is hire an independent owner's project manager. So that's something required by state law, but it's actually a good thing. And what the owner's project manager is, it's an independent person. It's not the contractor, and it's not the architect. It's an independent professional that represents the town and taxpayers, making sure the contractors aren't bilking the town, making sure the architects aren't inappropriately running up the design fees. It's an independent entity, keeping track of everything, making sure it's on time, on budget. The architect will finalize the design, create those construction documents. We go out to bid, we select the winning contractor. Presumably it'll be within our budget. If not, we don't accept it and we have to start over. And then we would start construction, which would be overseen by the project manager and the architect. And those little arrows at the bottom, that's a phrase you might hear a lot with public building projects: design, bid, build. That's the way we have to do it. Yes, ma'am.
Technically, who is the owner?
Sure.
Because previously it said like the owner's contingency and things like that, so.
Sure.
While it's being built, who owns it?
Sure. So the question was, who's the owner? So the owner is the town of Rockland. So, and the town of Rockland, it's obviously the taxpayers, but through the taxpayers, it is the Board of Selectmen and the town administrator as its agent. And of course, there'll be a committee, but it's the town. The town is the owner, and we own the site. And that's something that I'm glad you asked that question, because when folks have asked why we picked this site, the architects talked about some of the other locations we looked at. We also looked at other areas in town, but we don't own any other areas in town that are suitable for this site. If we were to look at any potential other area in town, that would only make this project cost even more, because we'd have to pay the land acquisition cost to acquire another site. So this is the only site that we own that's in the right spot. Yes, sir.
Are there any plans for the current site?
I'm going to get to that one. Yeah, great question. So again, with the timeline, so town meeting and election is April and May. You can see that the schedule, I won't read every line. If all goes according to plan, construction would start in the summer or fall of 2024, and the fire station could be complete roughly in the summer of 2026, which is a pretty kind of standard timeline for a construction project this size. I think you looked at my presentation ahead of time. Yeah, good. So I want to be clear. You noticed in that the ballot question, it was only saying, will we exempt from Proposition 2.5, money to build it. The warrant article, which I don't have in front of you tonight, but again, the motion will reference $33.2 million. It's talking about constructing a new station. There's nothing on the ballot or the town meeting warrant for this May that's going to answer that question about what the future will be. We want to get through the approval first, and it's going to take a couple of years, as you just saw, to get to the point where the fire department could actually move out of here and move into a new station. But to answer your question more specifically, some decisions will need to be made. My personal recommendation as the town administrator that I'll make to the Board of Selectmen would be at next year's town meeting, May of 2024, my recommendation will likely be that we ask town meeting for authorization to sell the station, to redevelop it, put out a request for proposals, to have a private developer come in, maybe have some kind of mixed-use development with some commercial activity in the bottom floor, residential apartments on the top floor, help bring tax revenue back into the town, help the local economy, and also, I don't know exactly what we could get for this building if we were to sell it. Hypothetically, if I make up a number of $1 million, I'm just making that up. Yeah, you could submit a bid like anybody else. Yep, I'm just making up, hang on, let me finish my thought though, hold on. So hypothetically, if we got $1 million for this building, under the law, we can use that $1 million to offset the cost of the fire station project. So if the price came in at $33 million and we sold that for $1 million, now the price of our project just went down to $32 million. So that can directly offset that cost. I'll get to your question in 1 second. I just want to highlight one thing because I know one of our library trustees is here. There have been other ideas for this building too. The library, which is right next door, you can see it a little bit there on the right. They've talked about their need to expand. You know, they have interest in potentially expanding in there. These are all things that would need to be discussed, so I don't want to imply that my recommendation is going to be the answer. But that's a common thing towns do, is they look to surplus buildings, sell them, put them back on the tax rolls. Yes, ma'am, you had a question? Charlie, you want to give her the mic so I don't, thank you.
I do have a question based on what you just said, which is, if this is approved and it goes through, that fire station, the old one, will be occupied until the new one has been built. But we'll already be paying taxes for the new one.
Right.
So if you sell this building for $33 million and you've paid for the new fire department, when this one can be sold, do we then get a tax refund of what we paid for?
Okay, so first thing is, I don't think we're ever going to get $33 million for this building, just to clarify. So, no, that's fine. So I would say this, the fire department has to continue to operate during construction, right? So we can't move them out of here, sell the building with nowhere for the fire station to go. That's obviously common sense. When we don't, if this project were to happen, we don't go out and issue bonds for $33 million all at once. We do it as we go. So there'll be a small amount of temporary borrowing in the beginning. And so if we get to the point a year or 2 or 3 later and we sell this building, we'll immediately borrow that much less. Because we don't borrow the whole $33 million at once. We do it in phases. And there's reasons for that. There's federal laws about how you finance municipal projects. So I guess a simpler way to say it is, there wouldn't be a refund because you would never be paying that extra amount of money. We're never going to double dip. We're only going to ever tax what the net cost is, and if we're going to generate income from this that's going to offset the price, we'll borrow that much less. I hope that's clear. Is that clear to folks? Yes, sir.
So, historically, I think when we have auctioned things in Rockland, we're not done really well of money incoming. If this does not become part of the library, we decide to auction it 2 years from now, are there measures that can be put in place to make sure we get at least fair market value?
Sure. Let me repeat the question. So the question is that your opinion is the town has not had good experiences auctioning town properties, and how can we be sure we'll get a fair price? Great question. So the first thing is we will not auction this property off. We're not allowed under state law to auction a property off. You can only auction a property that you take from tax title, from lack of tax payment. So that's not the case here. This is town-owned property. So we would not auction it. We'd do something called an RFP, a request for proposals. And to get into the weeds a little bit, because you asked the question, what that means is the town would say, well, first, the Board of Selectmen would have to decide they want to sell the building. Then it would have to go on a town meeting warrant, and town meeting voters would have to vote, yes, we want the town to sell the building. So then the selectmen would decide, all right, what do we hope to achieve from this building? Well, like, what kind of use do we want? Do we want any kind of use? Do we want a restaurant? Do we, whatever it might be, art studios, a music club, whatever, lots of ideas. There could be more than one idea. They'd have preferences. They could also have minimum prices. So, the town can, and when the way these proposals work is there's a price and a non-price proposal. So the town might decide, ooh, this one's offering a little bit more money, but this one that offers a little bit less is way better for our economy and so the town will have a lot of control over how it disposes of that property if we get there. Yes, ma'am.
Is asbestos an issue
So we have done a environmental assessment of the Lincoln School, and we are in good shape on that building, as well as the soil, the site as well. We have done work for remediation in the current fire station. I don't believe that there's, I'm not sure.
Two small spots.
Two small spots left is what the chief just said. And to be clear, you know, these are what they call non-friable. It's not something that's or airborne that's going to make people imminently sick. But whenever we do any renovations, like we replace some flooring, we knew there were asbestos tiles underneath the floor that had to be professionally abated, and that cost a lot. So apparently, yes, there are a few small isolated areas that will have to be addressed, and that would certainly affect the purchase price of the property. Or if we don't get to build this project and we need to continue to renovate it, that's increasing our costs for continued maintenance. So the future, you know, is uncertain, but those are just some of my thoughts. And with that, we'll open up to questions. We'll start with Mr. Ward, who has the microphone.
Thank you. Mr. Lapp.
Could you speak up a little bit, Jack? Because that doesn't amplify. That's just for the TV, for the recorder.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Lapp. My name is John Ward. I live at 22 Nevins Circle. I'm in favor of the new fire station. It should have been done a long time ago, but it wasn't. I do have questions regarding how we how we pay for this. 20 years ago, we built a new police station, over 20 years ago, and we were fortunate enough to have a team of people on board between our town administrator, police chief, and state rep, where we obtained a grant from the Commonwealth. The building, I think the project ran $2.2 million. Out of that $2.2 million, the town had to come up with something less than $200,000, and that was their share. From what I understand, and I know there is no grant money available at this moment, but I was told by State Senator Keenan's office that there are 3 senators working on a public safety building authority, which is being designed to set up as similar to what the school construction authority was, where grants will be made available to towns, cities and towns, to build and or refurbish police stations and fire stations. Now, nobody has a handle on when that's going to come into effect. I was told that they're hoping to get something done possibly within the next year. But, you know, you're dealing with the Commonwealth, God only knows. But if that authority gets set up, I really have 2 questions here. If that authority gets set up down the road and we're in the middle of this project, say we approve it, would we be eligible, and you may not be able to answer this, would we be eligible to get grant money, you know, during this process through that authority? I don't know what they do currently with the school construction, if you can apply for grants to build schools once you've passed an override. I don't know. That's one part. The second part is, you know, would it be prudent to check with our legislators to get a read on the status of this authority, and when is it really going to come to life? I mean,
I understand your question, Jack. I understand. I'd like to answer that. So this is something that's been talked about for literally decades. Decades it's been talked about. There's been bills pending for years and years and years. The big problem that the legislature's faced is, what is their recurring funding stream that the state would use to fund it? Everybody agrees it's a great idea. Every town needs a fire station and a police station, just like they need schools and libraries, so it's common sense, but the state has not come up with a recurring funding stream to pay for it. So I do keep in touch regularly with Rep. DeCoste and Senator Keenan, and we've talked about this very issue. And the problem is there's no identified funding stream for it. So And of course, the problem is the longer we wait, if we just say, well, let's wait for that program, that new state program to come someday, this cost is going to continue to skyrocket and is going to continue to cost more and more every year. What I believe will happen is you can see there's quite a period of time until we actually even award a contract. So we would certainly have our ear on this, keep our eyes on this very closely. We would certainly not want to lose any opportunity for grant funding. We will always keep an eye on that. But again, I mean, if any of us felt like this was about to be passed, right now in this legislative session, we would obviously want to pause. But I don't have any information that it's more likely to pass right now than it was last year or the year before or the year before that. Chief, did you have a comment? Let me give you the mic.
Thank you.
Mr. Ward, I was just in a meeting on Thursday with Representative DeCoste and asked him the exact same question, and he was not able to give me an answer. It's out there, and we're praying that it gets passed, but there's no answers from the legislators at this time.
And I'll just make one last comment to this. This question has been asked to me earlier via email from a couple residents, and I think this is not your point, but I just want to say it because it's related. I think some confusion sometimes with some people is that the thought that any bill that gets proposed automatically becomes law. And that's just not true. Lots of bills get proposed that never get enacted into law. And this type of program has been proposed for a long time, and they've just not identified a funding stream. Sure, Charlie, I know there's a question behind you as well, but did you have a comment first?
So I do have a comment. So I just want to say that the committee looked extensively and
Yeah, speak up,
exhausted.
Charlie.
The committee looked extensively, and we exhausted a lot of different avenues to try to find grant money for this building or any part of it. We hammered that around many, many times, and there's just no money out there to do it, unfortunately. And the town of Rockland has had great success with grant money for a lot of different things. Unfortunately, there is no money out there for this type of project. And just to tack on a little bit to that, the current station, like the chief said, it's a 90-year-old building. We've spent literally thousands of dollars, maybe even hundreds of thousands, to bring that building up to code. We brought a sprinkler system in. We brought a fire alarm system in. But we're still, when you get down to it, we're dealing with a 90-year-old building. If you had a house that was 90 years old or 100 years old, you know that becomes extremely expensive to maintain over its lifespan.
There's a question, that gentleman behind you.
This question's more geared towards the chief or lieutenant or whoever, but of course it's like a stone toss away from our station now. How do we feel strategically that is towards the developing Rockland and getting like the response times from one side of Rockland to the other? Do we feel that it is in a good spot to be able to get from Home Depot or over towards Millbrook in a respectable time with, the future of Rockland upcoming?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Early on in our project of looking at a station, we did do a response time study. We brought in a company called Manitou out of New York, upstate New York, Dr. Charles Jennings. He is an expert on fire department response times and allocation of resources for a fire department. He looked at the town. He ran studies through computer systems that he has. The response difference from the current station we have to the new station is negligible, enough that he considers at the same location for a response time study. So we wouldn't be changing our response times to any areas of town currently. Now, I will say, getting out towards Home Depot area of town is our longest response times at this time due to traffic. With the build out of that area of town, we will eventually have to do something in that area of town for coverage. In doing that, if to build a second station, if we decided to build 2 fire stations or renovate the current station, build the second station, we would have to hire additional staffing to staff that end of town. That additional staffing would be about 4 people per shift for a total of 16 for the whole department. When you run all the numbers and you do I did a theoretical budget at this year's numbers, it's an additional $2 million. That's additional $2 million for going forward every year on top of our current budget, and that would just, increase as time went on. So, what Dr. Jennings had said is at this time, with our current staffing model and the town's current plans for staffing, is to build a centralized fire station, a new station for the town, and then build out as that area of town grows. Now, why can't we have 2 stations with our current staffing? The way we operate with 7 people per shift, 7 firefighters per shift, sometimes 6. We cross-staff. On some calls, firefighters might be taking an engine in an ambulance. On a fire call, we might be taking an engine, an ambulance, and a ladder truck. But the people that are on the ambulance staff the ladder truck, or at least one of them jumps over and staffs that truck. So we have personnel moving around from apparatus to apparatus depending upon the calls. If we were to split our current staff in between 2 stations, we would lose our flexibility to provide the best coverage to town. So I hope that answered your question. Thank you.
Hello. So my question is, we're taking on debt for 30 years, and I'm not sure if you just answered it, but it sounds like we're building the same size police station, fire station. So does this look at the projected populations in the next 30 years, or are we in fact looking at a second expense?
We are building, so the current fire station that we're building is being built out to accommodate a much larger department than we have. Yes. So currently, we're staffed at 32 personnel. This current fire station could roughly house probably about 45 personnel.
Is it still the 6 bays for the trucks?
It is 6 bays. However, these are 6 double bays. Let me see if I can get to a... So here are the 6 bays that you're asking about here. You notice that we can fit 2 vehicles per bay. Currently at the current fire station, we can only 2 bays can fit 2 vehicles, and they're 2 small vehicles. Where this one, we'd be able to, like a fire engine, let's say that's our medium-sized vehicle. We could fit in this new station 2 fire engines back to back. Where our current station, we can't do that. We can barely fit 1 in some of the bays. So, thank you.
Sherry, that was a great question, and I want to just add one thing to the chief said, because one of the comments from a prior meeting we had was, can we scale this project down to have it be smaller, less expensive? And so we're trying to balance being responsible and not having to hit taxpayers with anything more than they need, while also planning for the future, because it wouldn't be responsible to only build the same minimal spot we have now and instantly outgrow it the next day. And that's something we've learned from talking to other departments and other projects. Other departments greatly regret squeezing something too small that they immediately outgrow. So this tries to responsibly have room for some reasonable amount of growth. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question to follow up to what the chief said, because maybe I didn't understand the gentleman's question. His question seemed to be related around response times to the Home Depot and the town, and you're saying eventually that might get so populated that your response times from the new fire department will be unsatisfactory for safety. And I guess my question is if that end of Rockland by the Home Depot becomes so populated that your response times are causing safety risk, would we then be in a position within 30 years to build a second new fire station? Because it's not about the size. What I heard the question was about, does the response time improve from the new station? And the answer is no. But if that area gets more populated, we might have to consider a second station.
Yes. Yes, we would have to consider a second station. Currently, part of our response time study that was performed by Dr. Jennings, he took all our historical data of our runs. I think we did a 10-year look back. The majority of our emergency responses are right within the core center of town, very, very close to the Union Webster Street area. And then, we have we created a heat map. The darker the area, on the map, the more calls we did. We currently don't do as many runs down on the Hingham, that end of Hingham Street, as we do in the center of town. So the fire station would still be strategically placed. As that area of town grows out, as traffic congestion grows, as Southfield, let's take Southfield for an example, the old Naval Air Station, as that gets built out, and as homes get built in there, as businesses get built in there, whatever that model is going to be, yes, we are going to have to look at expanding to protect that area. No different as if out west in Texas, as these towns and cities in the little bit more wide open areas of the country are, they're building fire stations as they're building those developments. This is something that we will work very diligently on, and hopefully we can have the developers assist us with getting station quarters being built in those areas. Does that answer? Okay.
So David Saucier, Payson Ave. I think most of you people know me here. First and foremost, I have totally nothing against fire department, police department, first responders. Guys got a tough job to do. I have a 3/4 acre corner lot, $9,000 taxes. The infrastructure in this town is deplorable. We're building roads, but yet we've got 100-year-old water mains underneath them. Most of the people in this town don't know that we have a sewer plant that the DEP is getting ready to shut down. Okay? This probably isn't I should probably be saying this in town meeting, but I got to say it. That price tag's 70 to 80 million. If the DEP shuts that plant down, we as the taxpayers will not have a vote on that. That'll be a mandatory do it. I'm not saying you guys deserve the best equipment. You guys have a tough job to do. But I look at the average, Rockland is a blue-collar worker town. Always has been, moving forward, hopefully it always will be. You take a guy that works a job that makes $30 an hour, he grosses $1,200 a week. After taxes, maybe he's lucky he takes home $900. So after the proposed fire station, after the sewer plant, I see my taxes over 11 grand. Now that guy that's making $30 an hour is going to be taking one paycheck a month and giving it to the town, 25% of his income. Like I say, I think you guys deserve nothing but the best. I'm all about safety. But where does the open check, blank check policy stop with the town of Rockland? Because it's getting a little, we're paying for 2 schools. Should we have built a school before we fixed the sewer plant? In my opinion, no. But someday we ain't going to be able to flush our toilets. And as they say, we'll all be shoveling shit against the tide.
Okay, we're gonna have to censor that one out when we post this online, but I appreciate the question. I appreciate the question. A couple things, and I want to recognize we have one of our Board of Sewer Commissioners here with us today, Sherry Valley, who just raised her hand, so I'll certainly give Sherry an opportunity to respond if she wants. But one thing I want to highlight is, if you look at the Board of Selectmen meeting that we had just last night, we had the sewer commissioners at the Selectmen's meeting to talk about what the plan is to address our sewer needs, because you brought that up. And you're right that if the town were to try to fix everything at the plant all at once, it's a big number like that. But that's not the approach that we're taking. And I say we, the sewer commissioners are taking. They're looking at phasing something over many, many, many years in phases. And we're doing this to make sure we stay in compliance with the EPA permit, so the EPA doesn't shut the plant down. And the sewer commissioners are on top of what the first most urgent need is. And the Board of Selectmen voted last night to give the sewer commissioners an additional $1 million in federal funds that we received. You may have heard of the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA. So we've committed another $1 million in ARPA. And you're going to see an article at town meeting that's going to authorize the sewer commissioners to take that $1 million plus borrow $1.5 million, and they're going to use that to do the first phase of the design for the first phase of their work to stay in compliance. Now, they're not going to be paying for that through regular tax increases through your property tax bills. It'll be through increased sewer rates. But I get your point. Money's money, right? But I get it, and I'm saying this. I'm saying the same thing, right? So I'm trying to be very transparent about that. Money's money, so you're going to be paying some of it through your sewer rates and some of it through your property taxes. But my main point is just that you're not looking at a $70 or $80 million project hitting all at once. This is something that is going to be designed and constructed and financed over many years, if not decades. So I just wanted to make that point. And I guess secondly, my other point is we're faced with having to do multiple things at once. So if the alternative is, okay, let's just not do anything until we completely renovate our sewer plant, well, then what's going to happen to the fire station? Like, I mean, something will have to be done. It will not be safe. It will not be effective. So I recognize your point. I hope those additional pieces of information were helpful. Lori, hang on one second, Lori, did you have a question earlier? Yeah. Here, let me give you the mic.
Okay, yeah. So I met with Chief Duffy the other day, and we talked about costs that we won't have to pay anymore if we got rid of the old station. So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure, thanks, Lori. So I don't know if you don't recognize her from being famous on TV on Selectmen's meeting. This is Selectman Lori Childs. So Lori and I met yesterday, day before? Yeah. Day before. It all blends, right? So in some of the things that we're also working on with the architects, we were trying to get some numbers for today, but we just couldn't make it happen. Obviously, new construction, new equipment in a building, more efficient equipment, better insulation. Obviously, this building, as compared to the fire station, on a square foot cost, and I preface it as that, will hopefully be cheaper to operate. However, we also have to keep in mind that it's a much larger station than the current station. So utilities, while it's a bigger station, we're hoping that utility costs do not increase because of efficiencies. What we won't have to do is, we won't have our monthly meeting with a plumber to be at the station to fix leaky showers, leaky faucets, toilets, whatnot, or to have electricians coming in on, a bi-monthly, status to repair garage doors, openers, faulty circuits that, So obviously it's going to be a new building, and there'll be, as Lieutenant Williams said, a little bit less upkeep of dealing with a 90-year-old station. Yes.
Are you considering solar power?
Absolutely. So the goal is to make this building as efficient as possible. Now, as you can see in this very conceptual design, so please don't hold us to this, solar power on the roof, and You're even seeing many parking lots being built with covers for solar power too, to increase the square footage of solar energy to be captured. This is all plans within the station to make it as efficient, energy efficient as possible. Yes.
Yeah, didn't we figure out you'd be saving like $13,000 a year because you won't have any natural gas?
We don't know that. We don't know what our overall savings were going to be.
Well, currently, like,
So currently, our fire station is roughly, our natural gas bill for the year is roughly $14,000. This station is being designed as an all-electric station. And again, that is what the engineers and architects are designing. I still haven't been able to wrap my head around that yet. And again, concept at this time, not fully designed. We still have a lot of studying to do on that. So natural gas costs are obviously will not be a consideration. However, they will be substituted with electrical costs. So we don't know if that's going to be an exact savings.
and what about a mechanics bay?
So a mechanics bay.
And how much that is?
So currently, fire department, police department, the highway department, parks department sub out most of their mechanical work for their vehicles. At this time, the mechanic the Rockland Fire Department utilizes to fix our apparatus charges us $150 an hour to repair our apparatus. So one of the concepts I've been working for since I've been chief was to get a town mechanic that services all departments. Within the design of the fire station, we've added a mechanics bay and a work office workstation for the mechanic to have a town mechanic to have a spot. What's this do for us? We get to fix our vehicles at a cheaper hourly rate. We have somebody that's dedicated to Rockland Fire Department apparatus, Rockland equipment, just not the fire department. When we send a truck over to get repaired, it's not waiting in line behind 2 or 3 other fire trucks. We have a mechanic that tracks, records all of our maintenance. Not that it doesn't get done, but you have somebody that knows exactly how to record it, and then would call me up and say, hey, Chief, A2, the ambulance number 2 needs an oil change in lube, send it over. So it alleviates some of the stress in tracking that department heads would for tracking equipment in the maintenance on it. So it provide for more efficient maintenance of the vehicles and hopefully overall savings to the town.
Before we go back to you, Lori, I just wanted to make sure, Sherry, going back to sewer, I wanted to give you the last word if you had any additional comments or if you wanted to clarify anything I said earlier. Were you so accurate? Okay, great, thank you. Lori, you had one more? Did you have one more? Okay, because there's other people, so I want to get...
No, this is in the same wheelhouse as this. Can you talk a little bit about keeping the vehicles indoors versus outdoors and the elements and how much that?
Yep. As I said earlier, the current station, we are moving vehicles out of doors to, we've run out of room in the station. So we are keeping vehicles outside, which again, is a wear and tear on the maintenance. It will reduce the lifespan of those vehicles if we can maintain them inside, yes.
And the last one is, people come to me all the time and say, why don't we just, upgrade the current station, expand it or build up, or what's your...
Yep, we discussed that earlier as well. Yep, the current site is just so small that to put a modern fire station on there, we would have to look at expanding beyond our property line, which would mean, potentially having to take houses by eminent domain. If you looked at some of the earlier projects or presentations we've given, we would look at having to take 2 or 3 properties behind the fire station, current fire station, just to fit the design as it is today. And that would be just for construction. It wouldn't even be for parking or training areas. And we'd still be limited to a shorter front ramp and, yeah. Yep. Oh, sorry, sir. Mr. Ryan? Mr. Ryan, you have a question?
When I first came here, when I first got on the Board of Selectmen, this was a backwards town. We were in the boondocks somewhere going in the mirror to ourselves. We were kidding ourselves. We always operated on shoestring budgets and caveats, and we go to town meeting, but we always got through it, but we always were living on the edge of the shoestring. And yeah, this is a blue-collar town, yeah, maybe, but we got Millbrook, we got the people up on Beach Hill, we got all these new houses, we got a housing development down in the old, off of Forest Street that a lot of people live in. We got places all over the town where people have increased our lives. And we have made an awful lot of progress in the last year since I was on the Board of Selectmen. When I first got here, when I first went to get elected, I couldn't say, hey, you know what this person said about me? Because somebody would say, oh, my cousin, my brother, my sister-in-law, my aunt, my uncle. We were run by families. Now we're run efficiently. Now we have people who know what they're doing in positions of authority so that we can make progress. And we are making progress, and we've made tremendous progress over the last 20 years. From when I first came on board, we've done so much. We've built things, we've saved land, we've kept open spaces. The Board of Selectmen in the town of Rockland has worked diligently to improve the standard of living in the town of Rockland and have made great strides. We want to keep it going. Don't fall behind. We can't go backwards. Backwards is not the way to go anytime, anyway. You know why rear view mirrors are so small and windshields are so large? Because when you look back, you only want to glance to see what was there. What you want to do is look ahead because that's where you're going. And you know something? Keep going. We've made tremendous progress. The Board of Selectmen is working for you. Every department basically is working for the benefit of the town to keep it running good so that all services work. You go to some of these other towns with big names around here, and where do you see them on Saturday morning? At the landfill because they don't have rubbish pickup and stuff like that. We got things where people what? Sewer, water, rubbish pickup. Those are three of the most important things. The decent schools. You know? I don't know. Well, I say keep it going. I'm for the fire department. You know what? My father was a firefighter. My brother was a firefighter. I probably should have been a firefighter, but things didn't work out for me. But that isn't even the issue. The issue is those people come to our door to save our lives. That's what they're there for. And there are people in this room who can say that they came to their door and saved their life. And that's why we ought to support the town and the Rockland Fire Department.
Thanks, Larry. Appreciate that. Sir, did you have a question?
Just related to the mechanics bay garage, I think in one of the drawings it had the name of the surrounding towns. Are we going to be able to service other towns' equipment for a profit?
No slides that we have presented in any way or have thought of that in any way. That would have to be something that we would have to consider after we've established and become very comfortable with doing our own services. Yes, could always happen. I don't know. Any other questions? Well, we thank you all for coming here tonight. We appreciate your time. I hope you leave with a better understanding of why we held this, and thank you.